briefly, we can talk about the Trump transition. Let's begin with you, Dr. Shem Ochuodho.
Debarl, it's interesting what's happening globally. Brexit, Trexit, if you may, with Trump coming to power. I'm not too sure what it means for Kenya, particularly knowing very well that we get $2 billion every year from the diaspora, and about half of that comes from the United States. We're not too sure how Trump is going to handle our migrants in that part of the country. But more importantly, recently, I think the tweets, and I'm glad that Trump is tweeting, so to that extent I'm happy. But obviously he also raises interesting issues. He's asking, we've been pumping money to fight terrorism. What have we got to show for it in the past 10 years? He also talks of the US has been pumping money into the health sector, supporting Kenya's health sector. Professor is a former medical services minister here. What have we got to show for it? He also talks about AGOA and so on and so forth. I think there are legitimate questions that Trump is raising. So I'm hoping that he's going to be really hard on the pilferage that has been rampant in this country.
Right. We have a lot of legislators who have also said they will not be attending the inauguration of Donald Trump as well. One of them being Lewis. Let's hear from you before we come to Farah. Let's hear from Prof.
I was before him.
No, let's Farah go ahead.
What happened this morning?
I'm going sequentially. People who came late, they shall be the last one to speak.
Got to be careful.
Debarl.
Can wipe you out.
Don't worry. We're wiping out too many things. So there's too much wiping. Okay. Listen, rubbing off actually. Listen. This man is asking the right questions. I have been talking the same thing myself for ages, even in the last parliament. We have not gone into Somalia to eliminate Al-Shabaab. We have a reason other than that. Our KDF is not there to get rid of Al-Shabaab. We moved from here on a single line with probably 5 kilometers and 5 kilometers on both sides of the road and headed straight for the port. So we're doing all the business that needs to be done in the port. And we're also protecting the charcoal business. So while the Somali forest itself, the indigenous trees that are 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old are being depleted. And that's an area both Al-Shabaab and our own bigwigs there have a common interest. Because Al-Shabaab is also in the charcoal business. And they're also in the sugar business. They're also in all those, the stuff that comes out through that port. So we have not gone in there to fight Al-Shabaab. This is the reality of the matter. I mean, it's a good thing that somebody somewhere else comes in, and if this is one good thing that Trump has done, I support him fully. And nobody's fighting Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Debarl. Let me tell you one thing. If anything, the countries in the region who are frontline states and have taken their forces in there are out there to make sure that Al-Shabaab stays there permanently, where they have their own other, scripts. For us, there's no other script other than corruption. The money that we make from that place. And of course, the money that the international community also gives is in the form of donations. This is a small ragtag, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 boys. We could have gotten rid of them in less than 6 months.
All right, but still on that, let me just hover on that a bit, because also we've had these reports in the media about you also holding some...
That's what I'm going to talk about.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about
let me just ask you the question first of all.
Yes.
Listening to those statements that you uttered, and also listening to you this morning and saying, oh, this is because we have, the clammy fingers of corruption also, which is pushing the KDF in Somalia, first of all.
Yes.
You had categorically saying that, yes, KDF is out there to eliminate the Somalis.
No. This is a cherry-picked thing, by the way. They picked from one and put it and tried to do some bit of thing. But I will stand by every word that I've said. What I've said is that was an expose, an intellectual expose talking about demographies and the fact that the countries that are there, Debarl, we are not there to protect the Somali nation. We're not there to get rid of terrorism.
So you're saying this is cherry picking?
Of course, the way they put it and the way the translation is done is wrong. And
but it was so
hang on a minute. That translation is wrong. People are already translating it all over, and I think even some of those people who put that stuff in there have already removed it because they know the consequences. So that translation is wrong. Let me tell you what I've said, and I want you to hear that, and I stand by it. What I've said is that the countries that have contributed forces into Somalia are not there for the interest of eliminating terrorism from Somalia. There are other conspiracies. There are other issues at stake. One of them is to be able to plug into the money of the donor community. And who are the countries that have sent in there? We're complaining about our own KDF. There's a big report by the crisis team, yeah? The crisis team about corruption done by the Kenya KDF up there. We have Ugandans up there. You know what I mean? Tell me there's democracy and human rights in Uganda, by the way, let me tell you. And that has become the one thing that the regime in there uses against the international community. You push me too hard on democracy, you push me too hard on messaging and the rest of it, I'm going to move out of that place. I'm doing the dirty job for you by containing terrorism in that place. There is no containment of terrorism. For as long as that money will be flowing, for as long as that international goodwill from the international community, more so the developed world, is flowing, those countries in the region who have human rights violations, look at Ethiopia and what it's doing to its own people. I mean, these are facts, Debarl. And nobody's thinking about it and writing about it, right, including the media. Look at what we are doing ourselves. Ours is supposed to be actually the lesser evil. And look at the Ugandans. And look at Burundians, for example. Tell me there's democracy in Burundi. And those are the forces, those are the people who have contributed forces to the Somali nation itself. So they're not doing it for the sake of the Somali people. They're not doing it for the sake of their own nationals. This is only serving, it's a self-serving thing for the political elites of those countries. But now, for me to come out into the open and say that, I'll tell you where my interest lies. Every time there's a small thing that happens inside Somalia and terrorism and the rest of it, I become the target in here as a Somali. Right, you heard what happened. You remember what happened in Isli. Listen to me. All right, you heard what's happened in Isli. You know, the kind of things that are happening, the awful things that are happening to Somalis in Kenya because of terrorism across the other side, which we went in there not with the purpose of eliminating it, but creating it and proliferating it.
Let's hear from Honorable Jeremiah Kioni.
I think without doubt we will not endeavor to support or defend corruption, whether being done here or out there. We must condemn it. And those involved in it, as we have said it before, some of us must be held culpable. Now when they're in office and way after. And the Constitution again allows us to do that. But having said that, I think as an ordinary Kenyan, and we keep talking about Wajiko, asking Wajiko on the streets what is happening, you say that what KDF is doing in Somalia is the correct thing, because before they moved there, we were having a lot of terrorist attack in the country. When they moved there, that has been brought down. So to just condemn KDF and say they are not achieving anything on behalf of Kenya, I don't think is right. And again, they are also in harm's way, so it's important to be kind to them and be sympathetic to what they are doing. And I think, in my opinion, we have seen results from them. Again, not to re-emphasize, the number of terrorist attacks went down drastically immediately we moved into Somalia. I have heard about the Shako business. I have heard about these issues of people trying to go into Kismayo. But again, Kismayo, and I was a member of the Defense Committee in Parliament, Kismayo was being used to as a revenue source for the Al-Shabaab, and we needed to cut them off from that revenue and so that to deal with it. How we replace with it, again, another big issue. But I think it is it's also important to be careful, because Debarl, within the same month, we have now issues of translation. We hear Farah, deputy here, worried about how is it that they are translating what I said. The other day we had statements from Duare, again, what is it that they are translating, we are saying. I think we have now to lean on this talking on mother tongues. Because we talk with mother tongues to relay messages to people there. When it comes to the national platform, we want to walk out of it. And this is something that seems to be, we saw it also during the Maktor's funeral, where perhaps half of the speeches were done in mother tongue, and yet you are here at Nation and also at KTN and everywhere else, you are bringing it to us, and we don't understand these mother tongues. What for? I mean, we need to now start wondering, why is it that we are being treated to this kind of things? And this is very dangerous.
Well,
Mother tongue drove us into trouble 2007. When people wanted to incite others, they went mother tongue way. And when they come to the national platform, they talk in like national leaders. I am saying that because I didn't know that the Deputy Speaker will be found on the wrong side of the transition on this issue. But I think it is important to say this. I don't think Trump, the issue of terrorism, we need to really see what Trump is coming up with. You know, he's a loose cannon, so to speak, from where we are. And he is certainly going to weigh on us in different ways, and we need to prepare ourselves. If he does away with AGOA, for example, it will bring a lot of joblessness in this country. So I think we need to have a team engaging him and talking to him on our behalf, because we don't know how he's likely to behave. Certainly, the questions that he asked over the weekend are not good indicators to us at all. Forget about the issues of that we may want to raise, but as a country, we have benefited a lot from Obama's regime. Right. If he comes and changes it all of a sudden, we will suffer.
All right, can I put one fact straight?
No, just a moment. Okay. Let's say from Prof.
Well, I think what
if we take you back also, yeah, just hold on to your thought, and maybe I should ask something just in regard to Al-Adi.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had in 2011 where we saw, and I remember very well, very vividly, the Daily Nation headlining mission accomplished. And we saw that the mission accomplished, the KDF soldiers in Somalia had captured Kismayo, right? If we had the mission accomplished, still we have the KDF way back in Somalia. Why did we even have such a headline?
You remember, Debarl, I remember personally, I said that now that the mission is accomplished, KDF should come back home.
Absolutely.
I say that very clearly.
Absolutely.
Because my inkling was that if they stay there for too long, they'll commit the American blunder in Vietnam. If you stay in a place for too long, you become you may get compromised in local politics and local things. And what happened really is that they got in this chokehold. They saw what the Al-Shabaab was doing in some case, Mayu. They want to take advantage of the same thing, and they spoiled their name really. Both internationally and locally. So KDF should have come back and then defended our borders from the border.
Absolutely.
You know, this station where our soldiers were murdered, if it had been better strengthened with a bigger battalion there. I mean, I was reading the story over the weekend. It was pitiful because you just find out these people were more or less lame ducks. If the KDF had come back to our borders and stop this charcoal and sugar things, we would not be where we are, our soldiers being accused of corruption. And you see, another thing is, don't just accuse the soldiers, because the people who command them or who give them instructions are also to be with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, here in Lindsay House, the other people who control things. So we can't just see the people in the field and blame them. And policy makers and people who don't go to the field by direct things, those are people should have responsible. But having said that, let me come back to the issue of Trump. I think it's rather, to me, I think it's rather too early to judge what Trump is going to do when he's in office.
Yes.
One, because I watched the confirmation of his appointments on TV when they were being grilled by the various Senate committees, especially the appointment for defense, internal security, and the State Department. In many ways, they were at variance with Trump on some very key policy issues. Absolutely. So I have a feeling that however strong Trump feels that he's going to take certain decisions regarding Africa and so on, once he assumes office on the 19th and has now to sit down and face the bureaucracy, because really the bureaucracy that people make the policy, and tests these ideas, they may be tempered a little. But one thing is certain, I think he's very resolute in not wasting American money abroad.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the bottom line. He's not going to waste American money abroad because he thinks that money is too precious. He wants to use it at home. So I think that we have to clean our game. For example, the waste in the Ministry of Health, it is known. It's due to corruption, and corruption that is then covered up by government, because government knows the people are involved and they are untouchable. So you don't want to go there. All these things that David Inea has been writing about in the papers, for example, the overpricing of the construction of the SGR I mean, it's so clear what happened. So, and that kind of thing will pick up the American intelligence and say, we're giving money to these people, they're saying they're building infrastructure, but look at what they're doing. So I think let's not pretend as a nation. This corruption is hurting us very badly in all quarters. And unfortunately, it is too late in the day for the Jubilee government to say they are going to do anything about it, because now we're in an election mood, and more money is going to be raped from the state to finance elections, because also some people feel they may not be coming back. They better loot and go away. So we are in a very dangerous position. We are in a position where there's a new American government determined to make sure that their money is not wasted. But we are also in a year we are determined to waste money. So I think the consequence is that, although we may have a few people sympathetic to Kenya in the State Department, on Bureau of African Affairs or whatever, we are in a very precarious situation where it's going to be very, very difficult to speak on our behalf.
Right, let us hear from Dr. Shem Ochuodho.
Actually, again, Debarl, I think I agree with what my colleagues are saying. But the issue of selective, I don't know whether to call it amnesia, the corruption problem that we have at national level. The opposition forgets the major problems we have at county level. Yes. I'm very happy Professor is contemplating running for Kisumu government. I'm hoping they're going to bring the desired changes. My point is that, for me, Debarl, Jubilee is the problem, but CORD is not the solution, because they are two sides of the same coin. So it's true we have a big problem. In fact, for me, Kenya's problems could be summed in three things. The first one, of course, is the impunity. The second is, of course, corruption. The third is ukabila. In fact, Professor J.B. Ojwang calls them in another different way, but mounting to the same thing. The first problem, mediocrity. The second problem, political expediency. And the third problem, ethnic bigotry. If we can slay these three dragons at all levels of government, Kenya will be much the better.
Right.
But I don't think, let me correct Shem, really. I mean, the record is very clear. Those of us who are in CORD, who have been both in opposition and government, our track record, both in government and opposition, is very clear. Fighting corruption. If you look at the achievements of coalition government and the NAC government, it's very different from what you're seeing in the Jubilee. Quite honestly, what we laid down in Vision 2030, what we did in economic recovery program for wealth and employment creation, what the coalition government did to achieve the new constitution, to lay down, to implement Vision 2030 in terms of infrastructure. I'm not saying that there was no corruption in the coalition government, but the level of corruption we are seeing now,
true,
and the straightforward looting of public resources never occurred under Kibaki. I mean, look, let's be frank. If we were to do an audit of, let's say, the achievements of corruption in a coalition government, I mean, world of a difference. I mean, so, and then to say that CORD is not the answer. What is the answer? And we are living in a historical context.
There's a vacuum. Because it seems it's actually a conjoined twins that we're having in the Jubilee administration and CORD.
True.
They still have the same malaise.
No. I don't think that is true, really. I mean, that is, to me, that is a holier than thou attitude that people like Shem take, that these two are there, they are the same, there must be a holy thing somewhere. They don't tell us what that holy thing is.
Maybe the holy things could be the third way, the third way force.
What is it? Is it the third way force?
Certainly not the wipe away.
I think
certainly not the wipe away.
What Shem has in mind is the kind of rot that's there in the county governments. And then he looks at the CORD county governments, and he doesn't see any difference between the way the CORD governments are run and the way the others are run. You see what I mean?
But
hang on a minute. Let me just finish.
Let me just tell you what.
But
nobody is condoning the corruption in the county CORD.
But that's what I'm coming to.
One of the reasons why I'm running for office is to clean that thing up. Because that's not why we brought the
Can I say that for you?
But it is in this competition that the corrupt escape.
Can I just finish?
Let Farah finish.
I want to correct a few things.
Yeah.
First, it's not true that incidents of terrorism were eliminated after our forces went in there. We got the worst terrorist acts in this country after our forces went in there. It's after our forces went in there that we got Westgate. It's after our forces went in there that we got the Garissa massacre. It's after our forces went in that we got the buses in Mandera massacres. It's after our forces went in there we got a lot of explosions in here. All these things happened after our forces went in there. Number one. Number two, it is also not true that our forces did anything about the terrorism in there. The terrorism which is eliminated right now in Northeastern Province is because of one thing only. And we kept on saying this. I kept on saying this all the time myself when I was in the last parliament. Sending Somali officers into Northeastern Province. There is no way you can understand the language when they are planning it, wherever they are planning it. There is no way you can sneak into them and literally behave like one of them and gather this information and give it to the security machinery. Every single day right now, a terrorist act is being thwarted inside Northeastern Province by these officers. Why it took such a long time before they came to that realization that a non-Somali speaking officer cannot gather that information on it? God knows why. That's why some of us wonder, where is our government on in this war on terrorism? Secondly, he's talking about corruption. Do you know where the biggest corruption in the country is? And that has already been shielded in the Department of Defense. But nobody can question it. It's shielded from questioning.
From auditing. Actually.
From auditing, that's the point. I was told by a cousin of mine who was in the forces one time back that a small aircraft component which ordinarily would cost about 500 pounds, and they were buying it for 86,000 pounds. And these, you can't be audited, and that's where the day our military audit is going to come out into the open, because there'll be a government which is going to open up that thing, because there's nothing confidential and military strategy or security about a vehicle, a Mercedes-Benz or a Mack truck that is working for them and the spare parts for that. You know what I mean? What is strategic about is the number of bullets and where we buy and this kind of stuff, but not these other, what do you call, assets.
All right.
So the point I'm trying to get at, can I just finish? What I'm trying to say is that, for God's sake, Trump asks Zia, we've been fighting Al-Shabaab for a decade. Why haven't we won? Why do we support that massive benefit to corrupt regimes? What you cannot ask yourself, what you cannot audit himself, he himself understands through his process. They have more information than the ordinary Kenyan has. And why I'm asking is that, why do we have 30,000 forces up there chasing 3,000 Al-Shabaab boys and they can't get the job done? I mean, ask yourself that question. Why can't we finish them? If we went all the way and took their big base, why
we
can't
don't have the actual number that we have the Raktags at, the 3,000.
I'm telling you.
Al-Shabaab, the way it is, remains to be very amorphous.
And by the way, El Ade, the other thing I forgot about, El Ade happened.
We need to wind up on this. We look at other issues as well. Yes.
Yeah, but Debarl, get this right. It's the most important thing that Kenyans should be talking about. Because we are not sending our forces to chase them around now. We push them a little bit and we allow them to come back again. I don't know if you've been reading the news about a place like a garrison and a town where there's a military, and then the third forces move out and the Al-Shabaab comes in and this moves out and another one comes in. I mean, there's something that Kenyans and the people in this region need to know about. And if you don't know about it and talk about it, other people in the international community will talk about it.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Shem Ochuodho.
Debarl, David Inea has become a favorite of the progressive forces, if I may call it, of this country. Let me just quote my favorite from him about 2 weeks ago. He did say, we have in the course of the year established that the Jubilee administration is the most corrupt government in our history. But we now find ourselves contending with a narrative that the opposition is not an alternative.
Absolutely.
Jubilee is Kanu 2.0. It combines the worst of Jomo Kenyatta and Moi regimes. Jomo's was tempered by sensible economic management and Moi's by political inclusivity. Jubilee is as incompetent as Moi's, as exclusionary as Jomo's, and greedier than both combined. Now, that's the situation that we are in. He's not excluding opposition from the problem. Professor should not have left the path where he left us, because he knows where he left us.
All right. Let's come to Prof a bit. Let's come to Prof because looking at what we have also on the front page of the People Daily, this is a doctor's alternative also to strike. They have a plan B, so to speak. Prof, you are the Minister of Medical Services, and I think, does this collective bargaining agreement go back to your time in Tenwa?
Yeah, I mean, yes, the collective bargaining agreement has always been the issue. But I think the most important thing is how you revisit the collective bargaining agreement. In trade union, in worker relations, it is collective bargaining which is the center of things. And it's not a static thing, because the cost of living is increasing every day, inflation is changing, and of course workers must bargain for their pay. So if they say, fine, we had a collective bargaining agreement in 2013, we need to renegotiate it, you just have to sit down and agree to terms. I remember when doctors and teachers went on strike, when the late Kilonzo was Minister for Education and I was Minister for Health, we got together and in the office of the President and agreed on how to approach this thing. And we had talks, sometimes going to 2 in the morning, and finally we struck a deal. I mean, it is both looking at putting facts on the table, but also being diplomatic, but also being prepared to discuss into the thin hours in the morning. I don't think doctors and teachers are unreasonable. They will always give and take. The extent to which government is willing to concede certain points and recognize the dire needs of doctors and medical workers is the most important thing. But if you are intransigent in the bargaining process, of course you get stalemates. Or if you are insincere about what you offer, you'll get stalemates. And so I really have kind of kept off this discussion, because having been a former Minister for Medical Services, I would like other people to handle it. But I'm quite glad that my colleagues Hassan Omar and Mutula Kilonzo have taken up and called people to meet on Thursday, and we definitely give them support so that we can have some facts on the table.
But are the doctors really pushing for renegotiation of the collective bargaining agreement, or the realization of the agreement itself?
That's what I'm saying. The agreement was there. It should be realized. You can't keep on postponing it forever. And especially when
when the time you're leaving office, none of these agreements.
No. You see, what we have done, I can't quite remember, but we really had to implement previous CBAs to the letter. I remember the first thing I did when I was in the ministry with regard to the nurses. They came to me and I said, everything that had been agreed must be implemented. We can't keep it off the table for too long. So that was done. So I think in budgeting, really, when the Minister of Health is budgeting, they should have looked at the CBAs and the pending issues and implemented them. When the doctors see, for example, that 5 billion shillings is missing from the Ministry of Health, the more reason why you should ask for the CBAs to be implemented, because if resources are being wasted, they should be put to better use by fulfilling the CBA.
I think and if I just say one or two statements on corruption before I talk about the doctors, is that for as long as we continue blaming one another and looking at which regime is more corrupt than the other, we'll still lose this war on corruption. I think we need to move to the next level of what is the regime doing with those who are corrupt within it. And I think on that score, we have a lot that we can say Jubilee has done in the last. We've seen them sack people and send people home. And the resolve within some offices is clear. And I think if we take that route, we'll be able to achieve more for the country. And of course, informing Trump that our constitution, as opposed to there before, now allows us to follow those who are corrupt even when they're in office. And that brings me to the point of doctors. If there is a collective bargaining agreement that was signed, and I think that's what Professor is alluding to, that has not been implemented. And the reason that why the government is unable to implement it is because it was not it's not possible for us to meet the salaries that were agreed. Then it calls to question the kind of agreement, and maybe Professor would want to shed light into this. If we had agreed on 300% pay rise, and the government is unable, our expenses, our revenues are unable to meet those expenses, if the 300% pay rise puts the doctors completely out of the categories that are there being set by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, I think then we are calling into question how the persons who are in office then negotiated on behalf of us as Kenyans. Of course, because this negotiation must be done with projections in place. What kind of financial projections are we looking at? Because I think that is the issue. The doctors are saying implement what we agreed on. The doctors is saying what was agreed on is not implementable. Again, was this bargaining agreement agreed by the national government while we knew that the doctors or the health service has been devolved? What, and Professor would help us, how is it that we didn't bring in the governors or allow the county governments to come and negotiate with the doctors? Are those the issues, or are we putting them different?
Jeremiah, 2013 is a funny year, because 2013 is the year where the old government went out of office and the new government came in. You remember there were elections in August. So if you're talking about 2013, I don't know which part of 2013 we are talking about. I can only talk of the part of 2013 when I was in government. So if there was another CBA signed after August 2013, I don't know about that.
They talk, I think, of 2010. Was there a CBA done in 2010?
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
The 2010, yes, because that is when Mtula and I were in, Mtula was in education and was held, and those strikes were more or less at the same time. Let me tell you something. When these figures are fixed, they are not arbitrary. You don't pick them from the heart and say, this is what you do. Now, it's a very protracted negotiation. And in our case, the OP was involved, the Treasury was involved, everybody was involved to look at these figures carefully and to tell them, right, you know, it cannot be implemented this year, it can be implemented so many. And a lot of projections are done. They are not done haphazardly, you see what I mean? So when finally time comes when you say, this was agreed on this year, it was supposed to be implemented in phases, then those phases should be recognized. What surprises me is that it has been easier to implement CBAs for teachers. You have been seeing increases in salaries for teachers, but not for doctors. I mean, and the reason why, when these teachers and doctors were on strike, when Mutula and I were ministers, we combined because we didn't want this kind of contradiction. We said, look, these are both civil servants, they are essential services, they are both on strike. Let us sit together and coordinate how we do these things. So one of the things that is happening now is that people in the health sector can see teachers getting their agreements realized, whereas in the health sector it's not realized. And then they are told teachers was not devolved, education was not devolved because of ECDs, you were involved. But that's you have to realize the Constitution says that these two governments are set up separate but interdependent. Separate but interdependent. And some of us had argued in 2010 that we should have a medical service commission, equivalent to teacher service commission, so that health is treated the same as teachers in terms of service, not of paying for the personnel. That didn't happen. That doesn't mean that the national government cannot sit down with the county government
without doubt
and say, look, this is something that we, national government, the people who give you money in the counties, we should resolve this.
Right. Just hold on to that, because we have callers who are hanging on the line as well. Let's just hear from them. We have Evans hanging on the line. Good morning, Evans. Good morning, Evans. Hello. Good morning, Evans. Hello, good morning, Evans. Do we have Evans hanging on the line? Right, let's hear from Njoroge. Good morning, Njoroge. Hello, good morning, Njoroge. Hello, good morning. Right, we'll come back to a caller who seems to be having technical challenges with it as well.
Debarl, allow me to express my empathy with the patients that are suffering, some dying in hospitals because of this stalemate that we don't seem to be treating with the seriousness it deserves. Secondly, let me also share my empathy with the doctors, the medical profession, yes. That I think we're not handling too well. It reminds me of the piece I saw from New Times, Rwanda, President Kagame saying our most important resource is our people. It could never be better right than that. I don't think as Kenya, we've handled our professionals very well, and this includes doctors. Just look at the poultry, 100,000 shillings they are paid. You know, while our MCAs carry away, what, is it $1 million or a couple of hundreds of thousands?
360,000.
Okay, that's perhaps the official. But of course, what they do when they make some of these trips abroad that don't make a lot of sense. When Kenya Diaspora Alliance bring investors to Kenya, they're not available to meet them. They would rather go away to look for them. Yeah, so I really think we're not being fair to our human resource. As a matter of fact, one thing I asked Honorable Obuocha when I once met him, when he was Minister for Planning, I would have thought our gold and oil is the people. Do we have a national human resource deployment and development plan? That's the first thing, if I was in planning, I would look at, because this is our gold. But having said that, I think, again, the same problem we have of the two levels of government. The governors that I see on the war front with the doctors threatening to sack them, again, are on the other side of the government. Being aware that we have two levels of government, even what we call opposition or the minority, for the lack of a better word, is also government. So I think this is an issue that we need to address. I think government at the two levels need to sit down with the medical profession without intimidation and threats and find a solution. It's not fair what's happening.
Right. Is there a rhyme or reason why also the president, like we have the president retirement benefits, I think law which is being amended right now, they want to include also the Chief Justice who will go with a higher pack than what he has been earning while he was in office. And this also will also go back to the previous chief justices that we've had in this country. Is there any rhyme or reason when we're actually trying to come up with austerity measures to pay the doctors, why we should increase you and pay you more while you're retired?
Of course, it doesn't make sense that you get paid more when you are retired than when you're working before.
When you're working.
I mean, the best, I think, in the rest of the world, I think is the American system, one of the very good ones. It comes to, the Scandinavians. It comes about 75% of your earnings before.
Can we take Evans, who's hanging on the line?
Okay.
Don't lose your track of thoughts. Evans, good morning. Yeah. Yes, you have a question or a contribution for our panelists?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, Debarl and your panelists.
Morning to you.
Yeah, I'll have just 2 comments.
Yes, please, briefly, sir.
One is about Maalim, what he said about our soldiers in Somalia.
Yes.
I sympathize because we should not condemn our soldiers who have been working so hard, fighting for our boundaries and for the peace of this region. And yet somebody can comment there that we have 30,000 fighting 3,000 Al-Shabaab. I mean, is this in support of the Al-Shabaab? That's a very unfortunate comment. There are people who have put their life in line for the peace and security of our country. Second is about our brother Anyang,
yes,
who said that when the coalition government was in place, they did a better job than this time round when Jubilee is ruling.
Yes.
I just want to remind him, he was the Minister for Health. And I don't know whether he can tell us what happened to the funds, which I think it was 200 billion, which was under the clinics, which he had tried to introduce. And there was, I think, a person who was changing names. I don't know how that case ended. Maybe he can comment on that and tell us what he plans to do in future in the event that they have another government to be ruling.
All right, thank you.
Let me go and ask on that to answer that.
All right, thank you.
What's the name of the friend?
Evans.
Evans. Yeah, Evans, it's a good thing that you have asked this question. I want you for a moment just to pause and listen to what I'm trying to say. I'm going to say now. Our forces went in there. We just created a corridor on both sides of the road and only went to Kisumu and stayed put there. The local security machinery by the regional president in there has about 5,000 men and arms. For all these years, he has just been asking for a permission from AMISON itself for him to be allowed to flush them out wherever they are. Just give him the equipment, give him what you call the logistics and what he needs. He doesn't even need the AMISON forces to go and flush them out. He has been denied that, what they call permission. All this time, we're putting our own men in harm's way. There is no goodwill for us to finish the job. What I'm saying is that let's move out there, let's have the strategy, and let's finish the job. We're not finishing the job. We got all these terrorist acts after our forces went in there, which means our forces in Somalia failed to protect us here in Kenya. Because Westgate happened after our forces went in there. El-Ade happened to our forces while they were in there. Garissa University happened while our forces were in there. All those major incidents in which the terrorists came and did kill many Kenyans happened while our forces were there. So if you think they are there protecting you, why is all these things happening to us inside our country? And why are they not finishing the job? So the same question that we Kenyans fail to ask is, what is Donald Trump asking now? What is Donald Trump asking? He says, and it's there in page 9 of the paper today, he says, we've been paying you money for the last 10 years to finish this job, and you haven't finished it. What did he say? It's on which page? Yes. Donald Trump says, ask the question that every Kenyan should be asking. We have been fighting Al-Shabaab for a decade, which means supporting us to fight Al-Shabaab. They've been paying enormous, colossal amounts of money, billions of dollars. We've been fighting Al-Shabaab for a decade. Why haven't we won? Which means, why haven't KDF and the Ethiopian forces and the Burundi forces and the Uganda forces finished the job?
All right, thank you.
Why haven't they finished the job? Why do we support that massive benefit to corrupt regimes? Why do we support the KDF and the Ethiopians and the Burundians and the Ugandans doing business there? And there was a lot of what they call interviews that were done.
All right, let's hear from Professor...
Ugandan military guys who say, we don't want to finish this job because they're getting money from it.
We're stuck for time. We need to hear from...
Well, I think what Evans should remember is that when I was in medical services, what I was trying to do, or what I did, was to expand social health insurance. You remember the national hospital insurance scheme was only insuring inpatient care. That's why it was called National Hospital Insurance Scheme. We were transforming it from being a national hospital insurance scheme to a national health insurance scheme to cover both inpatient and outpatient, because 75% of our people, when they go for healthcare, they go for outpatient. In order for the National Health Insurance Scheme to cover outpatient, we had to do feasibility study. How was this going to be done? And this was done professionally with the help of the International Finance IFC and the Rockefeller Foundation. And that is when we got two firms through competitive bidding to do pilot projects in Mumias and Nairobi on how outpatient care could be covered by health insurance by the state. Now, this was strongly opposed by private insurance firms. And secondly, when we are going now to the stage of expanding social health insurance and covering teachers and the armed forces and so on, these private health schemes did not want the National Health Insurance Service to do it. They wanted to do it themselves. But at that point in time, I was away in California, and the Honorable Adams Otieno was in charge of medical services, and we went ahead and implemented the scheme to the opposition of private insurance firms because they thought this was going to pull the rug from their feet. I am glad that what I did in medical services has been realized now. We are now outpatient care. NHIF is covering much more now. You're covering diabetes and cancer and so on. That's what we're aiming at. But mind you, it was not easy to do this. I was really attacked, called all kinds of names, accused of corruption, and a report went to Parliament. Nothing was found. But you must be prepared that when you are trying to implement change against established interests, you will get attacked. You'll get resistance. And that resistance, I stuck to my feet. I'm sorry. I put my foot down and said, this must happen because we need a comprehensive social health insurance for our people. And that's what we achieved. It is still not good enough. I think we should go further and make sure that everybody is covered. At least now, even senior citizens can be covered by National Hospital Health Insurance Scheme. Before, when you are over 60, you would forget it. It would be covered.
All right, let us get your headline thoughts, Jeremiah Kioni and Dr. Shem Ochuodho.
One is, of course, this medical scheme that, or the medical things that Professor has talked about. I was in Parliament and we were certain, and I'm still confident that we still lost money. The benefit of it, I can see it, we can see it now. But there were people who tried to benefit from that system when we were making those changes, and I think that is what Evans is talking about. And I think that goes back to the same thing. We must always try and get the corrupt, because every time we are trying to move from one point to point A to point B for the benefit of Kenyans, there are those who try and steal from that, corrupt ourselves into it. And this is the same thing we are talking about KDF. There are people, and Professor mentioned it, policymakers here in Nairobi who are still benefiting from the presence of KDF in Somalia. But that does not mean that we belittle what they are doing or fail to appreciate what they have achieved for us. The fact that attacks came after they had moved in, if we have moved in earlier, and that I say this because I was in that committee, defense committee, if we had moved in earlier, other than for the disagreements that we continue engaging ourselves on a political platform, we may have stopped those attacks that came into Kenya. And I think it is important to really appreciate and said a word of congratulations to the men and women in uniform who are there on our behalf, on harm's way on our behalf. And we should make sure that we don't discourage them even as we see it on this platform. Of course, it passes me, or I get very, the details within which, with which Deputy Speaker talks about, he has very fine details on Somalia, there than what we have in this country. Maybe he is near the border, so he must be getting
Let's say from
more information than we do.
Debarl, it's good points that Evans makes. I'd want also to join him, along other Kenyans, to give credit to our soldiers, the boys and girls, who are out there for our good. Obviously, it's clear there must be some bad elements. That's where we need to focus. I should say that very often we forget our men in uniform. As a matter of fact, it's in that regard that last year, Kenya Diaspora Alliance has been given an Excellence Award. One of the people, the first person it gave what it considers to be a lifelong award was General Daudi Tonje, who many of us may have forgotten. Some of the information we have is that this was one person that government at one point offered a parcel of land. He said, well, thank you, but I'm okay with my small piece of land. You remember also General Tonje came up with the Tonje rules that at a certain age he had to retire. Even when the government of the day wanted him to continue, he said, I would be the last to violate my own rules. Yes. I'm sure there are men and women of the caliber of General Tonje who are doing the right thing.